Let's talk about 5 ways to work well from home because it's very possible to work and not do it well. So, unless you are a work from home entrepreneur, the reality of working from home can feel very different from what you see entrepreneurs post on Instagram. In fact, you may be missing the traffic, the commute, even your grumpy coworker right now. So, I have been working from home for the past 5 years, four of them with kids, and the first year with no help, despite running a full time business. In fact, three businesses while raising a little baby. And I had to fail forward so often to figure out the tips that I'm going to share with you today. And understand that at work, often you get distracted in the lunchroom or by people stopping by your office. So you might actually find when you're working from home that you'll be surprised at how efficient you can be if you use this as a pattern interrupt time to really make new habits. So let's get started. Tip number one, set expectations and boundaries. When you're working, work. When you aren't, don't. So that means when it's your work time, whatever you set those hours to be, don't be folding laundry or doing dishes or getting distracted, even by your kids. I know how cute they are if you can help it. Now, if you don't have another person to help you at home, it may be a different story. But make sure that you're working in your work time. And when you're not, when you're sitting down to watch TV or to cook or something else, turn it off. And this is the advice I have to give myself constantly. Next is communicate, communicate, communicate. And this is still part of setting expectations and boundaries. Communicate with your partner, your spouse, your family. Let them know what your office hours are, but also communicate with your boss because working from home is different and you have got to communicate so that everyone is on the same page. Release perfectionism. It doesn't need to look pretty. In fact, it probably will not. Results are what is important, not how great you look doing it. And understand that every day is different, especially if you have kids. Oh my goodness. Some days you get the nap, some days you don't. So, tip number two, let's talk about office space. Now, I used to have a designated office and I loved it because I could go in there and shut the door and everything that I would leave out would stay exactly where I left it. Once I moved my office into my bedroom by necessity and now working remotely, I have my office in my bedroom. You see my bed behind me. Your bedroom is okay to use. Just make sure it's a space where, if possible, you get a little privacy. And ideally, it's not a space where you're going to have to move laundry or dishes to sit at whatever you're calling your desk. Even if it's a fold up table, a card table, and a chair, just make it your desk space. Don't multitask with phones and laundry. I know it's easy to get on a conference call or a phone call and start folding laundry. It's tempting. But if you really are feeling like you want to get up and move about, do squats or plies and keep your energy level high. When you go into your office in the morning, ideally take a big glass or a water bottle and some snacks so you don't have to leave it because it's so easy to get distracted the moment you walk out that door by everyone else that is out there. And put away your phone unless it's urgent. Because if you were sitting in your office where your boss could walk by the door, you would not be going down the scroll hole. I love to connect my iMessages to my phone or to my computer so that if I do need to respond to a text, I don't grab my phone and accidentally somehow end up on Instagram. Tip number three is office hours. If possible, begin work at the same time you normally do and get dressed. Now, when you're not working, don't work. And when you're working, work. You might have noticed I repeated that because it's so important in that category as well as office hours. But be ready to go 110%, maybe 50% of the time, especially if you have kids at home. And you may have a spouse that's also working from home right now during this odd time. And you need to support each other. So maybe you don't get the work hours that you normally do, but be willing to go 110% focused. Use your lunch hour for connecting with your family and doing household tasks or being with your kids. Often it's easy to think I'm going to use my lunch hour to just keep working, but the reality is you need a break to be so fresh. And if you have kids, a couple of extra tips just around office hours. First of all, be willing to get very creative. You might need to wake up an hour earlier. Use nap time to be super, super focused. Maybe be willing to give your kids screen time for 30 minutes or an hour and use that time to be laser focused. Forgo the glass of wine at dinner. I know you're going to feel like you really want it, or at least just maybe stick to one, but use that time after dinner when either the kids are in bed or they're watching something to give yourself another 1 to 2 hours of productive time. That is my favorite time to be answering emails. Those things that aren't as urgent or you don't need to be quite as focused is to take care of emails. Tip number 4 is the warm up and the cool down. So I like to spend the first 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of the day prioritizing what I'm going to be working on, and then focus on doing that important thing first. The thing that will move my day, my progress, my business forward the most. Feel free to brain jump general tasks. I know I get a lot of anxiety when I have a lot of things swirling in my head. So I will brain dump literally a sheet of paper, and then I will say, what is the most important and urgent, and prioritize that, and then schedule them out throughout the day. And remember, focus your, what I call deep work, the work that you cannot delegate, that you cannot multitask during. Focus that deep work in the beginning of the day. And we're going to talk more about that in owning your time. And at the end of the day, do a quick wrap up. Look at what you accomplished, see what worked and didn't work throughout the day, and then tweak it or set up your game plan for the next day. Because when you have an idea of what you're coming into when you start the workday, you're going to be so much more productive and relaxed. And tip 5 is to own your time. And I'm going to link a podcast I did specifically about time blocking and power sessions to this. But it is so important to own that time you're working, whatever that time is. So I love to use a timer, whether it's an app or you just set it on your phone, and do 30 to 60 minutes of deep work or a power session, which is the stuff that you really need to concentrate on during that power session. And then take a 5 to 10 minute break. Go to the bathroom, get some fresh air. Again, go to get a snack if you hadn't already, and focus two to three of those power sessions in the morning. And then again, save those less important tasks like phone calls, returning emails for the afternoon or evening when your energy is not as high, unless you're in a business where phone calls are the most important thing you need to do. The second part is block those tasks together. If you're going to return phone calls, do them at the same time. If you're going to return emails, do it at the same time. It takes so much less mental energy, so you don't have to switch from one task to the other.